Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing today? I am super excited for this video because we're going to be talking about which palettes I would keep or buy again if I could only have 10 indie eyeshadow palettes. And this was a tag that was created by Annette's Makeup Corner a while back, basically just sharing what 10 palettes you would keep overall from your entire collection. But I thought I would kind of put my own little twist on it and do only indie eyeshadow palettes, and I thought about this in terms of if these were the only palettes I owned, I only bought indie and I had these 10 palettes, I would be set. But before we jump into my picks, if you are new here, I'm so happy to have you. My name is Amy and I love and adore indie makeup, so if that sounds like content you'd be interested in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now let's go ahead and jump right on in. Alright, so the first palette that I chose is the Glamlite Alondra Desi palette. This is a really beautiful neutral palette with some pops of warm tones. I love this palette so much. I find these matte shades so easy to blend, and the shimmers from Glamlite are one of my favorite formulas ever. I just feel like they're so multi-dimensional and like that really wet duochrome look on the lids. Especially the shade Rose All Day and Poppin' from this palette are amazing. There's this shade right here which is called Lit, and it's just a beautiful gold duochrome for the inner corner. I really love the shades Horchata and Jalisco because they are such nice transition tones, and there's one a little bit warmer, a little bit cooler, and then you've got a pop of pink, a pop of yellow, a pop of red, a pop of berry. So I just love this palette overall. I feel like it is a staple warm tone palette in my collection. I feel like on my channel I might have only done one video using this, but in my personal time I do reach for it more, and if I was thinking in terms of only owning 10 palettes, I think this is a really nice warm palette to have. And then the next palette that I chose, let's just go ahead and get the neutrals out of the way, is the Warrior palette by Juvia's Place, which is kind of funny because when this first came out I was very disappointed by it. I was like, Juvia's Place, they're gonna start doing more neutrals, like whatever. I was kind of not about it. But this is such an amazing neutral palette. I love it so much. You've got 3 different matte shades here, which I feel like those are some really nice staple mattes. I could do full looks with those. And then the golds are so beautiful. There's so many different dimensions here, and I feel like they don't look that bright in the palette, but some of these golds, especially this one here called Bakwa and Adia, are so like yellowy golden on the lid. They are stunning. I did use more of these neutral tones here when I did my best friend's wedding makeup, and I thought it turned out beautiful. So I just love this palette when I'm looking for warm tone neutrals, and I'm thinking if I could only have 10 palettes, I definitely want to have some really nice golds, and I like the golds in here a lot. Okay, the next palette that I chose is the Colored Rain Safari Rain palette. I love this palette so much. The formula and the quality of this is incredible. It's just one of the best palettes. I feel like it's actually kind of underrated. I don't hear people talk about it as much. I know at the time I'm filming this right now it's not available. It's supposed to be coming back, but if you do have this in your collection and it's collecting dust, this is your friendly reminder to pull it back out and give it some love, because I feel like the mattes are really, really nice. They're pretty easy to blend, but the shimmers in this palette are just so foiled and so easy to use. You don't even have to spray your brush or use a glitter glue, and they are so intense. This shade Lioness is probably one of the most intense golds of my entire collection. It is stunning. It can be a little flaky if you're not careful with it. You really want to kind of pack it onto your brush and tap off all the excess, but I love this palette. It gives me some warm tones I love. It gives me some greens. It gives me a little bit of cool tone as well here, which I don't have as much of in the 10 palettes that I chose, because I know I just don't reach for cool tones all that often, especially more gray shades. But this is a beautiful, beautiful palette. Next, if you're familiar with my channel, you might have already been able to guess this, but I had to include my Whale Song palette from Menagerie Cosmetics because there have been so many blue-green color stories coming out in eyeshadows, and this is just my favorite version. I feel like the shimmers in here are so beautiful, and the shades of the mattes are so beautiful. It's just such a stunning color story, and I love the formula of these mattes so much. They just blend like a dream, and they just look so smooth on the lids. It's just incredible. So I thought if I was going to have one really nice blue-green palette, it would definitely have to be my Whale Song. This is one of my favorite indie palettes of all time, so it definitely made my if I could only keep 10 list. Alright, so let's talk about the one true rainbow palette that I chose, and that is the Glamlite Cake palette. I went back and forth between this and the Tropical Wonders palette from Certify because those are my two favorite rainbow palettes, but in the end I chose Glamlite because I love these shimmers in here so much. Again, their shimmers are just wet looking on the eyes. They're so dimensional. Some of the best shimmers you can find in a palette, because I feel the more you get into indie single shadows, the less shimmer shadows in palettes impress me, but these are so amazing. The mattes in here are relatively easy to work with. It's a rainbow palette, like through and through it's a rainbow palette. I chose this because it would give me all the color options I need, but also stunning metallics to go along with it. Next, I had to go ahead and include my Menage Cosmetics Pastel Pup palette. This was hard. Again, I went back and forth between this and another palette, which would be the Shroud Creepy Cute palette. Those are my two favorite pastel palettes. I have a full pastel palette battle if you're interested to see. I'll link it right here. But between the two, if I had to sum it up very quickly, the Pastel Pup is my favorite color story because I love the range, and the Shroud is my favorite color formula for pastels. But when it came down to it, I thought, do I want a better formula or do I want more shades? And my heart said more shades, so I decided to include Pastel Pup here. I think that this would add a lot of versatility and variety to the other palettes I chose. And I just have fallen in love with pastels so much. I know I need some pastels in my life. Alright, we're 6 palettes down with 4 to go, and I'm ready to talk about some grungy greens. So the first one I had to choose is my Juicy Olive palette from Give Me Glow Cosmetics. I feel like the color story of this just really stands out, and I love the shades so much. When I did my Battle of Green palettes, which I can leave here as well, this ended up being one of my favorites simply because I feel like so many green palettes, it's like one color plus green. It's warm tones plus greens, cool tones plus greens, purples and greens, blues and greens, and this is just the grungy greens that my heart desires, so I love that so much. The formula of Garnish and Shaken Not Stirred are beautiful. They are such nice greeny gold metallic shades, really vibrant. The matte shades from Give Me Glow Cosmetics are not my absolute favorite formula. I don't think they're the easiest shades ever to blend. They're not bad, but I just have other things that I like more, where I'm not super enticed to continuously purchase their single matte shadows. But because this color story is so stunning and so unique, I really wanted to include it, and I think if I could only have 10 palettes, this would be my go-to grungy green color story, and I think it works really well with some of the other things I've mentioned. And then the other one I have here is the Tribe by Juvia's, which I know a lot of people compared this to the Colored Rain, Safari Rain, and I honestly feel like they're different. There's nothing super similar between them when you actually put them head to head. And this is another one of those greens with warm tones color story. I love this one as well, and I feel like I had to include it because it has this really amazing neon-y yellowy green pop, which I absolutely love shades like that. And then it has an amazing inner corner shade. It has like this mustardy shade. There's a lot of unique shades going on here. This is actually my favorite palette from Juvia's Place of all time, so I had to include it in my 10 palettes. Alright, my next palette you've actually been staring at this whole time. I didn't want to take it out of its spot too early, but this is my Melt Cosmetics Vita palette, and I just feel like this palette is so unique, and honestly between the Vita and the Muerte palette, I was more excited about the Muerte 100%, but after playing with them, this palette really surprised me. And I think it would add a lot to my 10 palettes because I have some amazing vibrant greens here. Like, these are so beautiful. And then also some really vibrant warm tones, which I love. And then also it gives me a tiny little pop of cool tones. And honestly, knowing myself, that is all the cool tones I need. Between that and the 2 cool tone shades in the Safari Rain, I would be set because I just don't wear cool tones that often. And I just feel like this is such a vibrant palette. It's such a fun palette. It's so inspiring when I look at it. Plus the packaging just makes me so happy. It's just so beautiful. Like, you can tell there was so much love put into this palette, so I had to include that one. And then the last palette that I chose was actually kind of a last minute decision almost, because I had these 9 palettes I've talked about so far. I was looking at all 9 of those palettes laid out and I'm like, I have everything I need here. These are stunning. but I have one slot left open. So then I was looking at all of my indie palettes and I'm like, okay, I can sneak one more palette into this collection just out of pure pleasure and not out of necessity, because all the other ones were like, okay, I need this. Let me find something to match that need. And the last one, I was just going through my collection searching for a favorite, and I decided to choose the Glaminatrix Cosmetics Sandra Rose palette, which is a really beautiful one. Glaminatrix is an Australian indie brand, and there's a lot of variety in this palette. Here's what it looks like. So I've got some neutrals in here. I've got some more pops of green, although these are more muted pops of green rather than a lot of the grungy or bright greens that I already have, so I think they could add something to it. There's some peachy tones, and then there's also some more cool tones. There's also a really beautiful bluey silver and then almost like a rosy silver, so I think those could be great with the other cool tones I picked out. I just find this palette really easy to work with. The mattes are super nice, and every look that I end up doing with it I really love. Especially I did one where I did a full face of indie makeup I'd forgotten about, and I included this palette, and I loved that look so much. So even though I don't look at this palette and think, okay, that has exactly what I need, I felt like it was a nice palette to include as the 10th space. So those are all saw my life flash before my eyes. So those are the 10 indie palettes I would have in my collection if I could only own 10 palettes. I would love to know if you could only keep 10 indie palettes, what your choices would be, so feel free to comment them down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.